A bit of some breaking news here, but in British Columbia, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry, the same Bonnie Henry that just recommended selling meth and cocaine in retail drugstores, has come out and rescinded the vaccine mandate on BC healthcare workers. She also ended the COVID-19 emergency. Yes, it is the year 2024 in July, and there was still a COVID-19 emergency going on in the province of BC up until just a few minutes ago. It is a different world that the NDP is living in this province, to the point where most people are just going around living their lives, and these people are still in N95 masks pretending that we're in the middle of a pandemic. The NDP is obviously doing this. They're announcing this just because their polling numbers are falling apart right now. It was just back in June that David Eby was standing strongly beside his vaccine mandates. But now, a month later, the mandates are just unneeded anymore. Everything's totally good. Their polling is terrible. David Eby's approval is falling towards the earth, and that's why they're doing this. But I just want to quickly cut over to the announcement Bonnie Henry made, because it is quite surreal that you are watching this being done on July 26th.
We have reached a point in this journey that we've been on where I am confident that we can now lift the requirements of a public health emergency. So effective immediately today, July 26th, we will be ending the public health emergency for COVID-19 and be rescinding the few related orders that are still in place. And that includes rescinding the PHO order requiring COVID vaccination to work in our healthcare system.
It's so clownish. These people's minds are made of clown soup. David Eby should have fired her years ago. The thing is that he actually agrees with everything she's done, and he only sent her out here today because, again, like I said, the NDP's polling is falling towards the earth. If you live in British Columbia, before I move on to talk about some of the hypocrisy at play here, make sure if you live in BC, donate to the British Columbia Conservative Party. You do not want the sort of idiots who just announced that the COVID pandemic's over in BC today, July 26, 2024. If you don't want these people operating your province, that you don't want them ruling over you, you got to donate to the BC Conservatives, because fundraising is the only advantage the NDP still has over the Conservatives. The Conservatives have the momentum, the NDP are falling apart, but if the NDP can outspend the Conservatives, they might be able to hold off the Conservatives from getting a majority government here. But now I want to jump over, and the donation link's in the description below. I have it specifically on Bruce Banman's page to go donate to him. I'm helping him out in Abbotsford South here, and if we are able to raise enough money, we can then start distributing money to other Abbotsford ridings and other ridings in the Fraser Valley, so that we can try and 100% win this area of British Columbia. But I want to now jump over to a clip of David Eby just on June 17th of 2024. Thank you for Mo Amir for clipping his own show here, where David Eby was on a little bit ago to point out the hypocrisy here. But it was just a month ago that David Eby was standing beside his own mandates. Again, the fact that he was even thinking that this was a good position to take a month ago proves that these people are just completely out of touch with what the average person wants. Not just the average British Columbia resident, just the average human being. These people are so left-wing and so ideological. They don't understand that, like, these mandates in the year 2024 doesn't make you look progressive. It makes you look like a radical. And David Eby is absolutely a radical.
We're continuing to follow the science on this. We continue to have advice that it's safer for seniors, it's safer for people in long-term care if the staff are vaccinated against COVID. We shouldn't go backwards on requiring vaccines for healthcare workers. It's not compromising our ability to recruit healthcare workers. Okay. We're leading Canada in recruiting nurses and doctors and other healthcare workers. Alberta, which is taking a different position on vaccines, I'll say generously, they are struggling to hire.
Honestly, for a second there, because I'm from Alberta, what a jerk! What an absolute jerk to sideswipe Alberta when you are literally a month and 10 days away from taking Alberta's position on vaccines, because it's the rational one. But he's got to be snide and talk about, like, to put it generously, they're taking a different path on vaccines. Shut up. You're actually just a horrible person. Like, David Eby needs to lose this next election just for the purpose of actually going and getting a real job for the first time in his life.
Vaccines, I'll say generously, they are struggling to hire healthcare workers in a way that we're not. And I think it matters to healthcare workers that they know that the colleagues they're working with are supportive of things like vaccines or getting vaccinated. It's safe for patients, and patient care is number one. That's a different opinion from John Rustad and Kevin Falcon.
What changed? What changed, David? What changed, you shoe? What's different now from yesterday? Yesterday we were in an emergency. Actually, technically this morning we are in an emergency, and a couple hours later, actually we're no longer in an emergency, and we need all hands on deck. They did this probably because, yes, and it was a very rushed press conference, because yesterday David Eby put out an announcement saying that we're hiring nurses and doctors at the fastest rate we ever have. And then people were pointing out, well, actually, you're not even beating the retirement drop off that a lot of people are retiring. So they're not even hiring people fast enough to replace the retirees. And you guys seem like complete morons coming out and announcing how well you are doing on healthcare at the same time that you just fired, I think, around 2,800, I think even more than that in terms of healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, other support staff members. You can't come out and brag that, oh, we're hiring people 30% faster than we ever used to in the past 2 decades when you are in a massive healthcare deficit because you fired people. I've gone over the stats in some of my past videos before the mandates because of NDP mismanagement. The amount of people who had a family doctor from, I think, 2014, 2013 was like 84%. It's now like 77%. It's fallen significantly. No, we're not getting enough doctors to replace the amount of people who are retiring. Even a lot of the people that were kicked out of the healthcare system because of the mandates, I don't doubt a lot of them probably sold their homes and went to the US. They probably went to Alberta. They probably went to Manitoba, Saskatchewan. They probably went somewhere where the healthcare system actually respects them. Like BC residents respected them, but it's the hyper-progressive radicals who took over the government who don't respect them. John Horgan, frankly, probably would have never done this. I don't agree with John Horgan on a lot of policy issues, but at least he has human decency for other people. David Eby does not. He is a protester. He is a student union activist who somehow lucked in to becoming the premier of British Columbia. And again, this is all being done because their polling numbers are horrible. The last Main Street poll had them tied with the BC Conservatives, but with a massive momentum deficit. Only 44% of people are considering voting for the BC NDP in this election, with only 2% that are still undecided that they could maybe in theory win over. So let's be generous and say 46% of BC residents are considering voting for them. But even then, a lot of those people will end up voting Green or United. And then with the Conservatives have 51% of people considering voting for them and 8% still undecided that they could win over. Even if we're not being generous to them, even if they don't win over a single person who to consider voting for them, they're still beating the NDP by 5%, even if I am maximally generous. This is all being done. This mandate being rescinded is all being done to try and recover the popularity of Eby and the NDP. They are falling apart right now. That is why they're also walking away from decriminalization. A lot of these other things, they're not actually ending decriminalization. They're cutting around the corners to pretend like, oh, we're listening. They're not. They're not listening. David Eby is so unpopular that even his own party, even though the radicals in the background of the party, the far left people in the party, wanted him to become the premier after John Horgan, they bullied anyone out from trying to challenge him for the leadership of the party, and they just acclaimed him as the NDP leader and the premier of British Columbia because they know he's a weakling. He can't win a straight-up fight, and so he's having to manipulate everything at the end here. They've actually changed fundraising rules in British Columbia to make it so that it's difficult for a third-party challenger like the BC Conservatives from quickly rising up. They've banned businesses from being able to donate. The donation limits are extremely low. At the same time that the BC NDP made it so that they got a bunch of their money back because they were able to achieve more than 10% of the vote in the last election. So taxpayers are actually paying the NDP to campaign. Unions, more left-wing union front groups, are campaigning for the NDP. Activist organizations funded by the BC NDP are basically campaigning for them. The BC Conservatives have to do everything from scratch. So again, I'm not trying to be annoying. I'm not trying to, act like, make you buy a product or something. It is in your best interest if you're in British Columbia, donate to the BC Conservatives. If you donate $100, you get $75 back in a tax credit. If you donate up to $550, you get 50% of your money back. So make sure you do that. The only advantage the NDP has left is donations. So go down to the description below, click on Bruce Banman, Abbotsford South's donation link. We're collecting money to try and secure this riding. Then we're going to distribute money to other ridings to make sure that they have the cash on hand to be able to fight the NDP and be able to win a majority government. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Have a good one.